Organic materials, we separate them in basically in browns and greens, and we're going to make it easy for people to understand. But the browns are dry branches, paper, dry leaves, dry grasses, and the greens are typically green grasses, beans, grains, pastas, coffee and tea residues, vegetables and fruits, and eggshells. Typically, the greens are those that have a lot of energy and nitrogen, and the browns are the ones that don't have that much energy, and they have less nitrogen. Okay, so we want to mix about 75 to 25% browns to greens. Now, that's the ideal. We sometimes don't have that, and so you have to choose a different strategy in order to compost if you have different ratios. Okay. Now, organic materials that are not recommended until you're an expert are domestic animal residues, meat, grease, oils, bones, dairy products, weeds that might contain seeds. If you don't go through a temperature process that kills the seeds, you might be spreading the seeds of the weeds. Now, we do compost animal residues, we do compost greases and animals and things like that, but in this case, that requires a lot more experience to do. Okay. Now, you want to shred. You can use a mower to shred. Basically, you put your material on a pile and you go over with your mower, and that works out pretty well until you have branches. And for branches, you can modify your mower in order to shred. And I did this modification. It's based on a patent from a person called Consider from 1958. The patent you can download at the patent office. So the number is 2861611. Basically, what he did is he created a funnel that directed the material, especially branches, to the blade so they can be cut. The specifications are very simple. You can use a tube of 4 by 8 inches. You have to set up about 1 inch from the blade, and you should sharp your blade, make it very sharp so it cuts. Let me show you how I worked out with my mower. This is the tube you see here, and we set it up. We wanted to set it up at an angle so it wouldn't interfere with the engine. We draw a line and we cut that line, as you can see here. We refined the line a little bit, and we tried to fit it at the beginning. It didn't work, so we basically open it up. Here is the cut at an angle. And this is my friend Donnie at Juntas. He built this for me, fixing up a little bit the corners here. And then he created a base. This is one wet wing of the base. That's the base done with the angle. And then there were some holes made, and those holes were fitted to the machine. And this is how close to the blade that tube comes, and that's important. So once the material gets directed as close to the blade as possible. That's a funnel we built. It's not the best funnel, but it works out okay to put the material in, and that's how the mower looks. Kind of strange mower. So we did some testing, and it worked out pretty good. There is a video at Compost.pr, YouTube Compost.pr, that you can see this mower working. Okay, this is the cheapest way of having a shredding your material at home if you don't want to invest in other materials, and if you have somebody that can build it for you. Okay, this is how the material looks. You can see the branches are broken up, the leaves are broken up, and in this case that increases the leaf area and the area of the materials for microorganisms to work and decompose the material properly. So in this case we had a lot of greens, so we added some wood shavings to provide some carbon, and we added some wood chips basically for aeration, because wood chips, because these are so large wood chunks, they don't provide carbon. They don't have readily available carbon because the superficial area is small comparison to wood shavings, for example. But in this case, we added as an inoculant and to create some aeration, as when you have a lot of energy, when you have a lot of nitrogen, uh, your compost can heat up pretty much, so it can go anaerobic. Okay, this is how we set up the material. We set up the wood chips, and then a green layer, and then the wood chips, and then green layer, and so on and so forth. Now, let's talk about the mixing. You can mix while you're shredding. Okay, you can add brown material and you can add green material, so you can have a mix at the end. You can place materials in layers like you saw before. You can place the greens over the browns, so the browns will absorb the water. If typically greens have a lot of humidity. You can add finished compost as an inoculant. A handful of it while you're building the pile is good. Or you can add clays. Same thing, a handful to have good clay contact with the compost is good. And basically, clays add a template for microorganisms to form humic acids. Not all clays will do this, but some clays will work better than others. But when you create humic acids, you sequester the carbon or the organic matter into your soil in very large molecules that hold nutrients, hold water, and provide the nutrients to the plant. So they increase the cation exchange capacity. Okay, that is important for the long term in your production. Okay, of compost. Now you want to wait, and the question is, how long will it take to compost? And that really depends on many factors, but it could be as fast as 14 days to 12 months. Okay, what influences that is the carbon to nitrogen mix, or the grounds and the browns and the greens, the aeration, the particle size, the humidity, and temperatures. All these factors affect the compost and they interact between each other. What factors? The factors that affect the compost again are the carbon to nitrogen mix, the particle size, the humidity, the aeration, the temperature, and all these work between each other and interact between each other. For example, one of the things that you want to look at in your compost is temperature. Temperature is a factor that is affected by many other factors. For example, you set up your pile and it doesn't heat up. Heating means, and being hot means more than, let's say, 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, or up to, you want to be up to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, no more than that. Sometimes it would heat up more than that. Okay, but you don't want your pile to be warmer than that, because then you have so much activity that you don't have enough oxygen, and when you don't have enough oxygen, your microorganisms will start to die. Okay, and what you do is that you basically stop the cycle. So if your temperature is really, really high, you have to aerate. If you aerate and your temperature is high, your humidity will decrease through evaporation. Okay, if your carbon to nitrogen mix is not proper, you're not going to have an increase in temperature. Okay, if your carbon to nitrogen mix is not proper, you might have a lot of humidity. Okay, so you might need to aerate more. If you don't lower your particle size, if you don't shred, okay, your temperature might not increase, but because there is not good contact between the browns and the greens. So you can see there are many factors that interact, and let's go through some of them so we can try to understand the interaction a little bit more.